Hello friends and welcome back. It's Ollie from Flightcomp, and today we're going to go over the Samba V-tail fuselage for the Prestige, F5J, even the F3J version and the GPS version, all the same parts, so a lot of this will apply. We're just going to take a quick look at the parts, and then we're going to go over installing the servos and the linkage to get the V-tails working. I'm not going to do the receiver install or motor or speed control or any of that stuff. All that stuff's the same as previous videos I've made. So let's get started here. We'll look at just a brand new fuselage, how it comes from Samba. This is the back end here. You can see it has a little bulge, which is kind of unique, where the linkage is for the V-tails. Some beefy carbon joiners. We'll make our way up to the area under the wing, and you can see, if you're familiar with the Prestige, this is all identical to the X-tail fuselage, so nothing new here. And here's where the nose cone slips on. So we're gonna go over servo installation. And I have on the bench some of the items that you might need. First of all, this is the little accessory pack that comes with it. You get the harness, the fuselage side harness, and in here there's some Clevises and brass couplers, and then we have some wing bolts and a ballast bolt right there. Okay, some things you might need. We have some cutters, side cutters here. You can use those to cut the carbon push rods. Oh, by the way, JoJo has already done a V-tail setup video. I'll put the link for that in the description below. He did a great job explaining how to install the servos and all that. I'm not trying to step on his toes or anything, but I'm going to try to get some more close-up shots of how to do this stuff. So then I have just a silver paint marker here, or paint pen, just to help us mark some things. And then I have a couple pairs of hemostats. This is a straight pair and a curved pair. You could also use some small needle nose, long needle nose. Something like this that's really long and straight, or a needle nose that are really long, will be very helpful. And then I got a little Dremel tool here, definitely need that. Some various bits for that. I got a cutoff wheel. Sanding drum, use this for the Clevises and the servo arms. Various bits you might need to do the cutting in the fuselage. This is a composite cutting bit that's really small. Same thing here. This is, I believe, 2mm. And then we have a 1.6mm drill or 1/16 inch drill to drill the servo arms. And then we're going to be using the MKS 6100 servo. The fuselage was designed for this servo. I might also go over a KST X08 installation if I feel ambitious. It will fit with some modifications, and I plan to use those servos in my super light V-tail Prestige. And these are the horns that come with the MKS servo. And on the X-tail, previously we'd use this guy and cut it down and use the the first two holes here. But on the V-tail, we're going to use the short servo arm. And I've already prepped one here. I've opened up the hole to 1.6 and cut off the other side and ground that down. And then we're going to have to modify the Clevises. So we'll go over that too. You can see this clevis has actually been bent, so we'll go over how to do that. And on the back side, it's been ground down a lot to get clearance. The reason we're doing all this is because the way the V-tail linkage is set up, you really need the shortest servo arms possible to get precision and power out of your servos. If you were to just use this bigger arm, and let's say they use the first or second hole out, you'd run into double centering problems, sub-trim problems, and you would not be getting all the power out of the servo. So it's really important to use the shortest servo arm you can. Okay, the first thing I kind of start with is opening up parts of the fuselage to get ready for installation. So we have to open up the area for the plug here. We have to open up a pass-through here for the servo wires. And then in here we have to open up this side to allow our harness wires and VTail servo wires to come through and hook up to the receiver. And then I actually have a fuselage here that is ready to go. So this is kind of what the install will look like when it's all done. We got the plug in, servos in, linkages are all hooked up, and we have all our wires coming out here ready to hook up to our receiver. And then I also have another fuselage here with the V-tails on them so you can see what they look like. Here's our brass control horns on the back, and there's push rods in here with L-bends, but they're kind of pushed in right now, but we'll go over all that, how to hook them up. Alright, so let's get started with the servo installation. Alright, well, as I mentioned before, we have to do some work on these Clevises, and what you basically have to do is bend them, and that's so you get enough clearance with the arms and the push rods to run very short servo arms. So this is what a normal Clevis looks like. See, it's basically straight. And this is what I've done with these Clevises. I've heated these up with a propane torch. You could use a propane or butane torch, and then just use 2 pairs of pliers to put that little bend in there. And also, when I put the bend in there, I put a small 2mm screw in, just so that it keeps this threaded portion straight and only bends this little bit here. So now we need to do some grinding on these with the Dremel tool to get more clearance so we can get proper travel, so I'll do that right now. Alright, here's a Clevis that I've done some grinding on. I have ground a relief, and I have also basically trimmed down this entire edge. That's just to get some clearance from the servo. And then there's a relief here, so you can see this is how the servo moves. If I didn't do any grinding here, we wouldn't get very much movement in this direction. It would bind out. So that's what it looks like. Again, this is a bent Clevis. You can see what a straight one looks like. Put that right there, near that one. Something like that. And here's what it looks like on the servo. So essentially this will be installed in the airplane like this. This side is down, going down. And then I have also put a hole here in the fuselage for the servo wiring. So when we put both the servos here, the wire will wrap around and pass through this hole, and then go back and exit out of this hole we made to get to the receiver. So, hey, one of the next things I'm going to do is get ready to trim up the carbon push rods to fit the Clevises and couplers. And how I do that is I just get a servo, doesn't have to have a horn on it. And we'll just push this in place like that. Let me wipe some of the dust off here. Like that. And you can already see I have a silver mark right here, denoting the center line of the horn. So this center line here, if I was to hold this like this, and if I drew a line straight through the output shaft, I'm just going to mark it right there with a silver pen. And I've done that on both sides, silver paint pen, and that's going to help us trim up the carbon push rods. So basically we're going to put the fuselage aside for now, because we're ready to kind of move on to getting the V-tails on. And one thing I've noticed, let me zoom out a little bit. One thing I've noticed with the V-tails is they're a tight fit. Show you what I'm working with here. I'll just pull this cover off. As they come from Samba, you really have to push them on pretty hard to get them to go on. See, it only kind of wants to go to there, and I have to put a lot of effort into this to slide it on. And obviously I don't want to be crushing these tails, you know, trying to get them on and off. So just going to do a little bit of work to the joiner box on the tail, and also these joiners, and try to get a good fit. Okay, so we're going to start working on getting these tails to fit a little better on the joiners here, so we don't have to force them in or anything. And the way I start this is I start with the tails, and I use a small flat file like this, and just stick it in the joiner box and try to hold it flat, and just real lightly work this in and out. I'm not really trying to file material off here. I'm mostly trying to see if I can feel anything stuck in the box or any obstructions. So I just kind of move it around lightly, turn it over, do the same thing. Like this. You can go on the sides too, depending on how big your file is. You might have to pick a smaller file, but this one goes in. Well, that felt pretty good. I don't really feel any obstructions or anything in there, so I think the joiner box is okay. So we'll put that aside, and we'll move on to the actual joiners on the fuselage. I kind of have a multi-stage process for this. I'm going to use the same file and just hold it flat and lightly work the joiners like this. You're just going to move it around. You're going to go do all four sides of each joiner. So I'll go ahead and finish this up. Again, I'm going to do all four sides on both sides. So I've done the filing that I wanted to do, and the next thing I'm going to do is just get a piece of 220 sandpaper, and we're going to lightly do the same thing we did with the file. We're just going to go over this on all four sides. And the one thing I also like to do is get the corners and kind of round them a little bit. Yeah, I'm not putting any pressure on this, just real light. Just rounding these corners a little bit. I'm going to sand all four sides. I'm going to get right into the fuselage here. If you're worried about scraping up your fuselage, you can just put some masking tape on the fuselage to protect it while you do this, but I can get pretty close without touching the fuse. So this is what I'm going to do with 220. I'm going to do this on both joiners, all four sides of both joiners, and then we'll move on to the next process. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is just go over to some 400 grit sandpaper. Again, doing the same thing I did with the 220. Just going to go over all 4 sides. I'm going to hit the corners too and round them a little bit on both joiners. And hopefully after this process we'll have a really easy fit on our V-tails. It'll really make them easier to get on and off when you're coming to or leaving a contest. Okay, after going through that sanding with the file and the sandpaper, pretty happy with the way this is fitting. So we'll slide this on here. It goes on much easier and get a pretty good fit. And it's a little easier to take off. So once you do that and you get the tails fitting nicely, you can go ahead and mark and cut the carbon push rods. Okay, so we got our tails on, and next thing we're going to do is hook up the linkages or L-bends onto the tail. So I can flip this around. And they go on from the outside, so I'm going to use a pair of hemostats like this and just see if I can grab this guy and clip it on. There's one. There's two. Not too difficult. Once that's done, I'm going to tape up the V-tails to the fuselage, just to hold them in the center position. Like that. Then we can move back over to our fuselage here. Oh man, the lighting's terrible. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my hemostats, and I'm just going to pull up one of the rods. I don't think you can see this. I'm going to pull up one of the rods, and then I'm going to use my paint pen, and I'm going to mark the rod with that mark that we already made on the center line of the servo. Alright, I've unhooked the push rods from the tails, and what I'm going to try to do is fish them out of here. I'm pushing them back. See, I got that one out, and then just pull it out till we see our mark. Which is right there. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So we have our mark here too. Then we're going to grab our Clevises. I have my clevis here, and I've adjusted it in the middle, so I have room on this side and this side. We have our initial marks that gives us the servo output shaft center, and what we're going to do is take our Clevises and we're just going to line the pins up with those marks, and then we're going to draw another mark on the coupler at the about 2 or 3 millimeters where the threads stop. So back here, I'm going to draw another mark back here, and then that's where we're going to cut our push rods so that we can glue them into the couplers. There we go. You can use cutters off the bat, but I think using the Dremel first with a small cutting bit makes it a little cleaner. Here are my couplers, and I've used my Dremel tool with a cutoff wheel, and I've just cut a little slot on the end. This is just to help adhesion, and I've sanded the outside of the end a little bit with some coarse sandpaper. And on the fuselage, I have sanded the ends of the push rods that are going to slip into these couplers. You can pull the push rods completely out to do that, or you can just lift them up a little bit with some hemostats like this and sand them. And then I also had to extend this slot here on this side, so I pushed it all the way back and extended it a little bit just to help me get that push rod out. Okay, so I have some JB weld mixed up, and I'm gonna go ahead and use this to bond the couplers. JoJo also did a V-tail installation video, which is quite good. I'll put the link in the description below so you can check that out. And he used CA glue and just kind of crimped the couplers. That's fine too, but I think this is the way I like to do it, and I've been doing it like this for years with no problem. So first thing I'm going to do is zoom out a little bit. I'm going to get a T-pin here and just try to get some of this JB weld in the coupler with the pin like this. And again, I have these couplers adjusted about halfway. So there's one. I have another one here. Okay. Should be pretty good. So we got some JB weld in the couplers, and then I gotta put some on the push rods as well. So we're gonna try to fish out these push rods. Hopefully able to see this on camera. But I'm just gonna use my T-pin again and just put some on the ends. And there's one. The other side. Alright, there's two. Now we have to try to actually get these couplers onto those carbon rods. So the way I'm going to do that is just going to use some hemostats. See if I can get this better angle for you. Alright, so I'm going to try to grab one end and go in from this side. And I'm just going to run them together until it bottoms out. So that one's in. I'm going to come back and clean that up later because there's some JB weld oozing out of that. And we'll grab the other one. It'll be the same procedure. Go in here and grab this push rod. Come in from the front. Make sure it's bottomed out, and again they get that JB weld sort of oozing out, so I'm going to go ahead and remove my hemostats. Kind of see what I got going on here, and just going to get in here and kind of push this JB weld around, make sure it's on the outside of the brass coupler and also on the carbon rod. Kind of do the same thing on this guy. That. Okay, now gonna grab the push rod again, and I'm gonna kind of go back in with like the end of a pen and just make sure that that clevis is pushed all the way so it's bottomed out. That. Do the same thing with the other one. Okay. Seems to be pretty well bottomed out, and then I go in here and smooth that JB weld down a little bit. That one looks good. Okay, so that's basically it. It's going to take overnight for that to cure, so I'm just going to set this aside. Okay, our JB weld is dry, so the next thing we got to do is try to get these Clevises out of here, the push rods. I just got some of these hemostats, and I'm just going to lift it up and try to pull it through. Like this. There's one. Got our other one here. Not too hard. And now we can move on to actually trying to bolt down our servos. Oh, actually, you know what I need to do? I'm going to push these back in real quick, and I have an arm on the servo here. Let me zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to put this in and just try to center that arm in the slot that we've cut out. Just make sure it has even spacing on both sides. And then I'm going to mark where I need to drill. Let me grab my drill. You could mark these with the paint pen and then take the servo out and drill it that way, but I'm just going to go straight for drilling. I'm just going to hold it down, and I got my 16th inch drill bit here. Just sort of start those holes. Take the servo out. We'll finish these up. And then I'm going to go to a 2mm drill bit. Kind of open them up a little more. You could drill these holes based on the size of the screws you're going to be using. Okay. Alright. Now you want to center your servos. Just get a servo tester or something. That one looks pretty good. So I'm just going to put the screw in that. So you don't want the arm falling off. Okay. Now we'll go back to the clevis. I don't need the servo tester anymore. We'll see if we can hook the Servo up on the clevis. You don't want to lift that push rod up too much because you can break them if you try to bend them too much. So we're just going to try to, or just basically popped on by itself. I'm going to use my hemostats and make sure it's clipped on securely. Looks good. We'll simply push it back down. That's looking good, and I need a couple screws. I'm going to be using these little MP Jet self-tapping screws. The screws that come with the servos will work too. They're a little long though, so you really don't need a screw that long. These are about 5 millimeters long. But whatever you have that's similar will be fine. Oh, I forgot. Okay, before I get this servo in, I'm gonna actually push this wire in here. Gotta do things in the right order or else you'll be taking this stuff apart again. And then I'm gonna get my other servo, actually put that wire through as well. Just to make our life a little easier. And then you'll probably need some hemostats to fish it out, because the wires never seem to go where you want them to go. Okay, we got wires hanging through there, coming out, and I'm just going to leave this loose for now. And then one thing I like to do, it's not something you have to do, but I like to actually tape these wires down to the servos just to make a neater installation. So let me go ahead and drill the holes for this servo. So I'll just put the arm on here temporarily. And we'll push. Oops, that's wrong way. Don't put it on the wrong way. That's how it has to go. Again, center the holes. Center the servo arm in the slot. And we'll drill the hole, same exact procedure. Okay, so I have some cap-down tape here. You can use whatever kind of tape you want that works well. So this servo is going to go like this, and what I want to do is basically tape the back of the servo, tape the wire onto the back of the servo. So I'll just cut a piece of tape off here. Again, this is just an optional step. If you want to, that might make your installation a little neater. Just going to put some tape on the bottom, like that. Try to get it square. And then over the top, like that. That's a little long. Just trim that up a little bit. And then what I also want to do is tape this wire to the back of that servo. Get it underneath here. Roll this one on top. First we'll kind of push this guy back into its home. And leave yourself enough slack in the middle. Move this wire down a little bit, like that, and we're just going to pull tight and put that piece of tape over the top there like that. Okay, so we have the screw on that servo to hold the arm on, so that guy can go ahead and be permanently installed. Don't over tighten these screws. And then I need to center and put a screw on this servo, so I'll just lift that up again, get our servo tester, plug it in, and we're way off, so pull the arm off. There we go. Find a screw. There we go. Turn off the servo tester and pull Clevis up. I'm actually pulling this wire a little bit to get more slack, and the tape will let it slip. And we'll hook it up to the clevis again, same as the other side. Again, I'm not lifting up on the clevis. Use the hemostats to make sure it's secure. Push it back down where it needs to be, and then I need to pull some of the slack back out on the servo. That's good. And find some screws and screw it down. Again, don't over tighten. There's really nowhere for these servos to go once they're installed, so just a snug fit is all you need. And there we go. Before I call that done, I'm gonna test the travels, so we're gonna have to hook up the linkages of the tails. Hopefully I can do that on camera. Let me move this way up here. So you can see our L bends in here, and again, they go on the outside. So I still have my tails taped up here, centered, so I actually can tell if I need to adjust the clevises on the couplers. And I'm gonna have to wind this one out a little bit, and it's gonna be kind of fiddly because I gotta do it back here. So let me twist these, and then I will hook them up. So I'm gonna adjust the length to get them centered, and then I'll hook them up. Okay, I've wound this push rod out. It actually wound itself in a lot on the clevis, so it's still pretty well centered. The clevis is still pretty well centered on the coupler, and I'm just gonna hook up these linkages, and again they go from the outside in like that, so basically they can't come off in flight. And that's basically done at this end. Again, there's these little cover or caps that go on here, so you would just tape this on before you're ready to fly when you assemble your model at the field. It's pretty easy. And then really the next thing we have to do is just want to sort of secure the clevises. So then we're going to turn our tester on. We're going to move the servos a little bit. Yeah, I'm overdriving it just to try to expose that threaded coupler. There we go. Okay, I have some CA glue, and I'm going to get a needle or a T-pin. I have a T-pin here. I'm going to put a little bit of this CA on the T-pin. Then I'm simply going to apply this to the threads of the coupler. So it won't spin on the clevis. One more drop should do it. Just like that. And the other side is not quite as easy to see, so we'll have to hook it up to the tester again. Again, I'm probably overdriving this servo. Get some CA in there. I know the servo's screaming, but it'll have to survive this for another few seconds. Now we can center it. Okay. So that basically wraps up the servo installation. Now we're going to check out what kind of travels we get with the actual surfaces. Real quick, I'm going to show you that it is possible to get different kinds of servos in this fuselage. This would apply to the X-tail and the V-tail, but I'm putting some KST X08 servos in this V-tail setup. And what I had to do was I had to grind and file away about a ½ millimeter of material on both sides here, and then I put the servo in and traced around the arms, and I ground down about 2 millimeters here where the servo tabs are, and that actually allows the servo to fit quite nicely. Just like that. So it is possible with a little bit of extra work, and for the X08s I'm going to use the single-sided arm that comes with the servos, and I'll be using this second hole here for the clevis. So again, I'm going to have to drill this out to 1.6 millimeters and trim this arm down a little bit. Okay, here's basically our setup with the X08 servos. I used a 1 millimeter drill bit to drill the holes for the screws, and just used the screws supplied with the kit. And I just put a pin vise in chucked it up in my drill bit here to do that. So, hooking up the clevises and the push rods, exactly the same as with the other servos I showed you, so I won't go over that, but yeah, it is possible to put different servos in here, and maybe you'd like to use some smaller servos like this if you're building a FAI light version and you want to try to save some grams. Every gram counts. Okay guys, thanks for watching. I hope this video was helpful for some of you guys that will be putting together the Prestige V-tail fuselage. It's a little tricky, but you know, if you just kind of take your time and go over some of these videos and lay everything out ahead of time and think through the processes, it's really not that hard. And I'm really looking forward to flying a Prestige with a V-tail, hopefully really soon. So again, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.